Oh my.
Um, the experiences that I had in the military, they come through in my writing. I'm a geek. I'm a nerd. So I love diving into the detail, the technological detail of what I write.
Yeah.
When you're just free prose, just whatever comes to mind, let's put it on the page. It can sometimes paint you into the corner where you don't want to go. So you got to back up, rewrite, and do things like that. I do Bucky's out in the deserts with machine guns and rocket launchers. Said, "Oh, I want to do that." And I got there when they figured out that dune buggies just don't work. So it was the Humvee. The Humvee was new at the time. But seeing different styles of writing, you find your own.
Yeah.
And by finding your own voice, it gives you a platform to speak to others, and that's where the book comes in.
Yeah. Do you dream of adding your very own book to the collection of books that have already been written? Do you wonder where to start or how to finish? Does the idea of writing a book seem too overwhelming? Do you just want to polish up those writing skills or stay motivated? Do you wonder what to write about? Everything you need to help you write, stay motivated, and self-publish your own book is right here on one channel. And why? Well, because it's time to get over the writer's hump and just do it. You can write anything. Yep, you can write a book. Hello and welcome to a book. I'm so thrilled that you are here. Guess what? We have another great show for you today. I have a fantastic author with me, and he's going to talk to you today about his book and his writing process, all the things that you're used to hearing on this channel from our great authors. But do me a favor, before we get started, please hit that like and subscribe button. When you do that, it helps our authors out. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you to today's show, Mr. James Totten.
Hey guys,
James,
how's it going?
welcome to the show. Hey, I'm excited that you are here. I've
Very
been
excited to be here.
perusing your books today, and I was pretty impressed with some of the work that you've done. But I
Thank you.
want you to give our audience a little information about yourself, who you are, where you come from, what you've written, all that wonderful stuff.
All right. Excuse me. Just going to turn off the air conditioner in the room now so it doesn't bother us. No, my name is James Totten. Grew up in a small West Texas town, Northwest Texas town. Graduated from high school, did not understand what I wanted to do in life. And after 2 years of junior college, I joined the military. So I had a 23-year career
Wow.
spanning from 87 to 2011. And what I did was, is I was an infantryman the entire time, except for the periods of time when I was recruiter or an observer controller when I was assigned to Fort Polk in Louisiana. So my experience spans about everything you can do in a rifle company or an infantry rifle company, from a rifleman all the way up to the company commander.
Wow.
I was given the opportunity to go to officers candidate school very late in my career, and right back into the infantry, right back into the fire. And I deployed, let me see, twice as a platoon sergeant when I was in the 82nd Airborne, and then twice
Wow.
again when I was in 2nd Infantry Division as part of a striker brigade from Fort Lewis, Washington.
Oh
Um,
my.
the experiences that I had in the military, they come through in my writing. I'm a geek. I'm a nerd. So I love diving into the detail, the technological detail of what I write. Um, I use my experience and I want to bring a lot of realism as much as I can to the story.
That's so awesome. Let me ask you a question. I have a
Sure.
question for you. So, my husband was in law enforcement for a long time. So, when he watches movies or reads a book and there's a police chase or a police scene in there, he is chronically telling me how inaccurate those scenes are. So, let me ask you, when you read or watch a movie that has a military scene in it, do you critique it?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
I've learned to keep that to myself, especially around my wife. She's not too fond of hearing it, but you kind of see some of the things that they kind of mess up intentionally because of operational security. I think the
Uh,
biggest example was the Hurt Locker. They did some stuff in
mm,
that movie that I don't think happened anywhere in the world. But again, they didn't give all the keys to the castle to anyone watching the movie about how we work with explosive ordnance disposal. So there's a little bit of give and take with that. And then the authors, writers, screenplay, they take a little creative license, and a little bit's okay. But when we go way out in left field, I need an explanation.
Yeah. So then you're bringing some realistic elements into your writing. Are you then teetering on the edge of maybe giving away some of those secrets?
Gosh, I hope not. I mean, I don't want to be on a no-fly list yet, if I'm not already. But what I do is, I mean, because everything I do is fiction. So I'm looking, let's say I'm looking down the road a half a mile rather than right up front, and trying to predict or fictionalize what I think may happen in the near future, especially when we talk about the potential for a war in Europe.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, cool. So that I know that if I'm reading one of your books, then most of the things that you're talking about are plausible, right?
Yes.
Can be a little bit more plausible. And you write short novels, but you have a whole series, and we're gonna get to that in a little
Yes.
bit. Tell me what made you decide to start writing. Have you always written?
No. I've been creative my entire life. Some say I've been creative in mastering ways to get out of trouble, or creative in doing things to others. But I've been creative. My nerdiness and wanting to discover what makes things tick has always driven me forward. So what I do is I take open source intelligence. I find stuff that's readily available on YouTube and the internet, and I write that in books. And then what I'll do for the next book or the next book or the next book is take a piece of that and take it to the next logical conclusion on where they would go as far as design, implementation, and development.
Okay.
So
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be fictional. It's fun to be fictional around that stuff because I don't have to worry about military procurement programs, research and development. I just write this stuff, and it's a lot of fun.
So when did you first start writing books?
So for me, it came about in February of 22 with the invasion of Ukraine. I was presented with a whole plethora of emotion that I didn't know how to express.
Yeah.
And what I ended up doing at the encouragement of some of my friends is I started putting pen to paper. And then I obviously graduated to a keyboard. Started writing about my feelings and my experiences and how it affected me, because myself and a lot of other veterans at that time, we had been through we were Cold War kids. So we always thought we were going to be the ones that had to go face down the Russian bear and the Fulda Gap and do what we had to do. And then now, you know, I was kind of like, I wanted the war to happen in my time so I could deal with it rather than further generations. So there was a lot of conflicted emotion, when Russia invaded Ukraine. And
Yeah.
putting that down on paper, again, the encouragement from the friends was amazing. And what I ended up doing is writing a short story. I work as a military contractor, by the way. So I'm sitting down with my peers and we're talking and we're mesmerizing, we're doing all these things. And the whole title of the series, Breaching Ain't Easy, came from working with engineers. An in stride breach, when a formation is moving forward and they hit an obstacle belt, an in stride breach is one of the most difficult operations for a military commander to execute. And so there came Breaching Ain't Easy.
Wow.
There's a lot of material that's used for that. There was a lot of specifically designed vehicles. And what I did is I had a protagonist. I wanted it to be different. So I had a female protagonist, and her journey through losing a college scholarship, joining the Army, becoming an engineer or a sapper, if you will, and then moving. In the first book, she was a company commander. So she was in command of a group. Well, it's called I forget off the top of my head, but it's a Grizzly assault breacher. And it is a incredibly imposing piece of equipment. It's huge. It's got a lot of power, and it's built specifically to take those mines out of the ground and spit them off to the side. And with the Breaching Ain't Easy, I researched on that. I researched on the in-stride breach, and I tried to present a fast novel where people are doing things in real time and what happens.
Oh my goodness. Action packed.
That's it. Some folks that have, how do I say this? Some folks that have mentored me as far as my writing style is that action sells. Nobody wants to read about how the watch was built. They just want to make sure it tells time.
Right, right,
And
right. Oh, I'm so glad you touched on that. Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, if my name were Clancy or something, I could probably get away with it, but my name's not. So I want the action to draw the reader in and kind of feel the stress, the relief, the accomplishment, the loss, if you will.
Yeah, they don't need
And
all of the technical details, right?
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Just get them through it.
yeah,
Let them feel
and
it. Let them experience it. You want the book to be an experience. So I really
oh,
love
absolutely,
that. Yeah. I do know that there are writers who get lost in all of those details. And they just, after 3 pages of trying to describe a table, you pretty much tune out. So I like that you've written this in a fast-paced way. That's pretty exciting.
and some of my well, for the first couple, um, may sound like a book report or an info dump. So as my writing progressed, as my skill in writing progressed, and it still has a long way to go,
Mm,
it gets better. I'm
yes.
more into character development. I'm more into the personal, the human factor, and it presents unique opportunities to tell a story to someone who may have no military background at all and get the chaos of what's going on and let them live it through the book rather than actually having to go down to the recruiter and do the
I
job.
love that. Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. So let me ask you a question. What is the writing process like for you? Are you somebody who outlines everything first, or do you just sit down and write? How do
I'm
you
more
do
of a
that?
sit down and writer, but I am learning that I need to set up and I need to outline because once you have a direction, once you build a map, it's easy to get to the end.
Yes, yeah.
When you're just free prose, just whatever comes to mind, let's put it on the page. It can sometimes paint you into the corner where you don't want to go. So you got to back up, rewrite, and do things like that. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, my personal style is sit down and regurgitate, whatever pops in, pops
yeah,
out. And I'm very much like you. Now, most of my books have been nonfiction, so I didn't have the struggle of character development. But my last couple of books, I did not outline, and they are fiction. And I find myself doing things like, wait a minute, what did I name that character? I have to go
yes,
back. So
yes,
I think going forward, that's something that I've learned from, and I want to get better at character development and have that outline, a little bit more structure to what I'm doing, so I'm not all over the place.
yes.
It
I
makes
mean,
editing easier. Makes
well,
editing a
and then
lot easier.
also when you compose so many points of view that
Mm.
you're confused, so is the reader.
Yes,
So
yes,
I've had to dial
absolutely.
some things back a little bit, for clarity purposes.
Yeah, of course. Okay. All right. So you sat down and you wrote out this story, this series in a section of short stories, these novellas. Tell me about the very first one that you did. What was that process like? What did you have to learn?
Okay, I can describe it as chaos because it was. It was one of those things. I'd had a short story published through a publishing house in Texas, Raconteur Press. So I thought I was the second coming of Tom Clancy until I really got down to business and realized I wasn't. So I just wanted to take a slice of one pie of one company's actions on an objective. And the breaching ain't easy, Micklicks and Big Bears. The Micklick is a mine clearing line charge. It's basically a chain where they put explosives all on the chain and a rocket takes it out over a minefield. It blows up and the overpressure causes the mines to detonate. Makes it safer for the breaching vehicle as it goes down a line.
Okay.
And the Big Bear was the grizzly assault breacher.
Mm.
And what I wanted to do is I wanted to tell that story in a way where the courage, the compassion, the integrity, the intensity of the sapper community would come out. The folks that do this for a living, I mean, in my military service, I don't feel I'm a hero, but I know a couple. And I wanted to bring that out because that job, if you don't do it right, can be very lethal. Even
Oh,
if you
my
do it right. I
goodness.
mean, even if you do it right, you can get hurt doing it.
Yeah.
But the intensity of that point of friction where everything just comes together, trying to get through a obstacle belt is very exciting. It's very dangerous. It's very chaos. It's total chaos. And
Okay.
there's so many things that a military commander has to do to set the conditions before you move forward. And without going into the military decision making process, I wanted to bring that out in the book and let people be the judge of if it was good or not.
So are you somebody who writes at home? Do you go to a coffee shop? Do you need noise when you're writing? Some people like to have background music. I don't. I like it perfectly quiet. What's your style? How do you do that? How do you approach it?
I've dictated to an iPad in my car. I've typed on an iPad in my car. I go home and sit in my office and crank it out. It's when the urge hits me, I gotta touch a keyboard. I gotta touch a keyboard. And when you're going from 5,000 to eventually 15 and 20,000 words, you have to be very descriptive of what happened. You have to draw the reader, you have to make the reader care.
Of
And
course,
that's where the
yes.
character development comes in.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And so you've kind of just whenever the thought strikes you or the mood strikes you, that's when you start the process, whether that's dictating it or sitting down and writing it. How
Yes.
long does it take you to finish one of these?
Anywhere between 15 and 30 days.
Okay. All right.
Excuse me.
So you
So
get on it, boy, you get on it, you get it done. And
what I wanted to do, what I was trying to do is do the Don Pendleton method, where I've got a new book coming out every month. You know, he was using, I believe he might have been using ghostwriters at that time, but still,
perhaps.
in his Executioner series and the other series that opened up after that, it was a book a month, and then use the new book to promote sales on my back catalog, and eventually cater to an audience that wants this kind of action and this kind of fiction that just compels them to get their juices flowing and see where we go next.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So you're getting them out pretty fast. The very first time you published something, very first time, when was that?
That was back in the summer of 23.
And you went through a publishing house to do that. Is that correct?
It was Raconteur Press in
Okay.
Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you got a physical copy of your manuscript, what was that like for you?
Christmas, New Year's, and birthday all in one.
Yeah, yeah. I had a guest on a while back who described it as giving birth to a child, the birth of a child. And you put
That
so
might be
much,
cultural appropriation for
yeah,
me, but
you
I
put a
can
little bit of
understand the feeling.
yourself into that. And um, it's your baby, really.
It
It's
is.
your brainchild. It's everything that you have worked for. And then to see that in tangible form and realize that the rest of the world is now going to have an opportunity to enjoy that. That's pretty exciting.
It is.
What was the most challenging aspect of getting your book published?
Editing.
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 Okay. So
Yes.
did you hire an editor?
I have a close friend that wanted to help me out that was editing for me. And I know there's some times when he had a brief description of my animal husbandry when he's trying to edit some of these things. But it's an amazing process, because sometimes it'll take you in different directions. You have to go back and rewrite the whole story and act like you knew what you were doing the first time. So you can't have thin skin as an
No.
author.
Yeah. No.
If you're, I mean, I know to be emotionally attached to the book is one thing, but to hear somebody critique it and go like, and want to go cry in a corner, sucking your thumb, if it's going to affect you in that way, it may not be what you need to do as a hobby. And for me, it is a hobby. Just understand different eyes see different things.
Yes. Oh, I'm
And
so glad you said that. We talk about that so much. Almost every episode we discuss that on this channel because I'm a firm believer that you have to have a second, even a third set of eyeballs on that thing because we go blind to our own mistakes. It makes sense to us when we put it out on paper, right? It makes sense to us. But that doesn't mean that it makes sense to somebody else.
Well,
My problem is I struggle sometimes with commas. I'm always either overusing them or underusing them. And so I have somebody go through that and check all of those things, and continuity. I might use somebody's name somewhere and then not use it later. Oh, I forgot to add that character back in or something. So it's always good to have somebody else look at it, even though it makes sense to us.
oh yeah. I mean, in a military unit, you have different types of people all across the spectrum. The military is a reflection of our country as a whole because the people that join come from the country as a whole.
Mhm.
So you could have anyone in uniform. So to bring that forward, to write the story and be inclusive of, I mean, one of my stories, I use a National Guard unit from Texas, and a lot of the members are Hispanic because that's the area where the unit is. It's in the lower Rio Grande Valley, like from Houston all the way over to El Paso. And for me, that was amazing. Don't try, I mean, I don't try to write from the view of I mean, I try to write from the view of a person, what they see, what they feel, what they want to do, but I don't try to make that person inauthentic. I want that authenticity to come out for someone to look at this and go, man, this is good.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's difficult.
And having an editor, having somebody look at that to make sure that you're getting that point across, I think is just key to everything. Hey, James, on that note, we're going to pause for just a minute. This channel is sponsored by Victory Vision Publishing, and I do want everybody to hear about them. So we're going to hear from them, and we'll be back in about a minute. Hey, everyone. Are you stuck trying to figure out how to finish writing or publishing your book? Well, let me tell you about Victory Vision Publishing. Victory Vision Publishing is there to help you cross that finish line. They have package plans that are tailor-made just for your individual needs. They have learning opportunities where you can discover ways of overcoming some obstacles that you might have. Adam Fleming is a wonderful CEO, and they are a fully staffed team just waiting to help you edit, layout, maybe make a cover for your book. Go ahead and join their email list and check out some of the wonderful books and wonderful authors that they have already helped get published. Yep, Victory Vision is definitely the way to go if you feel stuck and just want some support in getting your book out to the world. You're only one book away from changing the world. victoryvision.org. Okay, we're back, and we've been talking to James Totten, and he's been telling us all about his writing process, his writing style. And why don't you tell us a little about your time in the military? You touched on it at the beginning of this interview, but I'm fascinated. Okay. Before we go any further, thank you for your service. I should have told you that from the start.
No problem at all. It was what I wanted to do, and I was very fortunate to have been able to experience what I did. Yeah. So I started out as a private. I was assigned to a unit in Fort Lewis, Washington, called 9th Infantry Division that doesn't exist anymore because they reflagged, realigned, all this other stuff. And it was supposed to be an experimental test bed unit. So at the recruiter's office, I saw they were driving around in dune buggies out in the desert with machine guns and rocket launchers. I said, oh, I want to do that. And I got there when they figured out that dune buggies just don't work. So it was the Humvee. The Humvee was new at the time. And I was a heavy anti-armor infantryman. So I operated and I do mean heavy rocket launcher. It was heavy to carry and it hit really hard. It was the TOW-2 weapon system. And for the first about 11 and a half years of my career, that's what I did.
Wow.
And I went from a private to a specialist, which is like a corporal, only different. Shout out to the Spec 4 Mafia here. Got to be a sergeant, spent some time in recruiting. I got to recruit in Denver, Colorado. And once my assignment was over there, I went to the 82nd. I was able to jump out of planes with 3,000 of my closest friends in the dark of night, hit the ground running. And we were like, every time, what would happen in the barracks when I was in the 82nd is if they took a break, they're in their rooms watching TV, and CNN would talk about something, and oh, we're going to lower Czechoslovakia, or oh my gosh, we're going to Kyrgyzstan. And, so the pressure, the stress was always there.
Yeah, of course.
They want to have wheels up in 18 hours. And we actually got blown out to go. We went to Iraq, and this was my second tour. There was a unit that was supposed to take over security for a large air base in northern Iraq, and they were not meeting their training gates. So they had to have somebody get over there and relieve the unit on the ground so they could come home and do the job until the next unit got there. And that was our job. And it was an incredible experience to be living in a tent. It was a big circus tent looking thing, surrounded by T-wall barriers, but the fabric was doped up. They used a glue / scumgolium on the fabric to make it wind and waterproof.
Yeah.
That was also highly flammable. We had our air conditioners that would go out every day when it was hot.
Of course.
we would get up in the mornings and we'd all go put on our PT uniforms, and everybody was looking at us on the airbase going, what are these guys doing? We're like running up and down these huge aircraft revetments, these huge bunkers that held Iraqi fighters. And we're running up and down them, and people are going, these guys are crazy. And we're looking at everybody else, these guys are lame, because that's a paratrooper. I came back from that. I was able to go and be a observer controller. So I looked at units during training exercises in Fort Polk, Louisiana. So I evaluated leadership, and I wanted to see what these leaders did and what they could do to improve. And I had about a minute to gain their trust. If I came across inauthentic, they didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
So
wow,
we're constantly working with these folks, working with a new set of folks every other couple of weeks. I think we pushed through about 4 brigades in a month. We were very busy, especially as Iraq was ramping up.
Yeah.
But that experience, seeing the different units operate and how they operated in a training environment when presented with a dynamic Op4, I had every scenario you could think of, from an airborne insertion to a heliborne insertion to a walk into the box. Mm. And then, how they would do their attacks, how they would do their defenses, how they would do their movements. So it gave a lot of material to fall back on when I'm writing.
Yeah. So can you pinpoint 3 specific ways that your military experience has helped you write these books? I mean, just in a thumbnail.
Yeah, I think the knowledge of the people, the knowledge of the leaders. That's what leaders, people. What do the leaders expect? How do they earn the trust of their soldiers? How do they accomplish their missions? And then the knowledge of the weapons. So I got out in 2011, so I was pretty current with weapons, but all the rest after 2011, I had to look through open source intelligence. Okay. Basically YouTube videos, go on manufacturer sites, pull that data in. So the people, the weapons, and then the situations. The situations could come from my own combat experience. They could come from my experience as an Op4 when I was in Germany, my experience as an observer controller at Fort Polk. I've deployed with quite a few units on peacekeeping missions, on stabilization missions, and then wartime missions. So it gave me very good resources to look at the people, the weapons, and the mission.
People, the weapons, and the mission, your actual experience all comes into play in that. You mentioned a couple of things that that resonated with me a little bit. So you said you were in Denver, Colorado, and I worked in Colorado Springs on Fort Carson as a civilian worker. That was my first real job, Okay. And so, I worked on that military post, and living in Colorado Springs at that time, I think I grew up around the same time you did, the Cold War, all of that. And we were so sure that we were going to go to war with Russia at some point. So I really resonated with that. But living in that environment, everybody was military, everybody. And, I, of course, was a civilian, but you still get that military mindset, having lived there with 5 bases right there in Colorado Springs. So yes. Pretty interesting. It's amazing. One of the things you said that I really appreciated was that our military is made up of people from all across this country,
Absolutely.
all different people. And it's a true representation of the United States. I love that. I love that you brought that out. Well, James, what we're going to do is let our audience see these great books that we've been talking about. I want to go ahead and pull up your book. It is on Amazon. And this is your latest one in the series. This is book number 7 of the Breaching Ain't Easy series. This is Mustangs and Thunderbolts. And you have more coming out?
I've got one with the editor, and I'm trying to finish one here in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so Breaching Ain't Easy. This is James' latest book in his series. And I'm going to go over here, James, and we're just going to go look at some of the other stuff that you have out because it's
Sure.
pretty fascinating to me. So let's see. We've got Breaching Ain't Easy, Saints of Malta. Is that yours?
That was the first anthology that I was ever published in. I
Okay.
have a short story in there, and
Okay, I
people
gotcha.
actually liked it.
All
So
right.
that was great.
Well, of course they did. I'm sure they did. All right. So this whole series, would it be, I don't want to give anything away because I want people to go read it, but would it be out of line for you to tell us a little about the main character or characters?
So the main character in Reaching Ain't Easy, Micklix and Big Bears is a young college student. Her name is Lisa Brown. And because of losing a scholarship, she ends up in the past before the book happens. She joins the military. She goes through training. She becomes a sapper. At the same time, she's selected. She goes and does a few other scare me schools, but her leadership comes out. And because of her leadership, because she's able to motivate others, because she's able to do correct actions under contact, she keeps getting promoted.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and then, like I said, in the first book, she's a company commander. I have her moving on to be a battalion and brigade commander in the near future.
Mm.
So it's the one thing that's always resonated in my military career is if you do good things really well, they're going to give you more things to do.
Isn't that the truth? Yep. Yep. That is so
And then
true.
there's some other supporting characters that kind of flow along with her. I've got a astronaut. His call sign is Fun Boy, and he's able to. One of the things that I just sat down and said, well, if I was going to do this, how would I do it? And I started exploring how to make an actual space fighter. So something that would take off from the ground, rocket into space, and have appropriate weapon systems to influence things on the ground. Boeing has been involved with, I think it's the X-37B, but these are space planes they throw up into space and sit there for 2 years at a time.
Oh,
And
wow.
Russia's convinced they have bombs. They're convinced, but nobody knows. Everything's top secret.
Oh,
So I designed a space fighter. I call it the F-39 Valkyrie. It is 737 sized, and it's a good piece of kit. Of course, I didn't have to design it or develop it or pay for it, so that the fiction writer, it makes it so much better.
oh my.
One of the
Okay.
tanks that I look at is I'm a big fan of automatic weapons, and there is a particular weapon system called a Bushmaster. So they have a Bushmaster 1, a 2, and a 3. So I designed the Bushmaster 4 that fires a 75 millimeter cannon shell, but it's able to do it rapidly. And so they go and they screw up a turret on an M1 Abrams to put that in there, and they're just able to lay waste with it.
Okay.
The others are one of the things that special forces, whether it be Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines, they have a small vehicle that runs on diesel that they can drive into the back of a helicopter. So I had to include that in one of my stories.
Oh, cool.
But
Okay.
you keep bringing these technological advancements in, and you just kind of let it take a life of its own.
So I know that you wrote these in a fictional way, right? These are all
Sure.
fiction. And you brought some of your real life experience into it. Are these things that you, from your experience, see actually happening maybe in the future with our military?
I
Are
really
these
hope not.
possibilities?
I
You
really
hope
hope not.
not.
No,
Well,
I want it to be fiction, but life has a unique way of imitating art.
isn't
So
that something? Yeah, that is so
yeah,
true. These are fascinating books. And I know that they're short. About how short, how long do you think it would take a reader to get through them?
Something came to mind that's inappropriate. So what I'll say is about the first one, you can digest it in one sitting.
Okay.
The other ones take maybe one and a half to two sittings.
Okay.
But I try to rely upon the action to drive the story.
Okay.
I don't spend in my first book, it's like, who is this? What is this? And
Well, and
what I'm gonna
of
do,
course, it all depends on the speed of the reader too. You know,
yeah,
some
but
people read faster than others. I'm a slow reader because I'm reading for detail. I like to really absorb what I'm reading. So yeah, it just kind of depends. But I do like that this isn't something, you know, that is going to take you a month to get through because it's this great
it's
big
not
giant.
Shogun, it's not
Yeah,
War and
it's not
Peace, okay?
exactly. Yeah, so I like that. Hey, James, we're going to show this just one more time. I want to pop this up on the screen. Guys, I
Okay.
want to let you know that if you are interested in these books here, and you should be, because James is putting so much of his personal military experience into them, then you can just head on over to Amazon and get those. And we're going to leave a link to his books in the description of this video, of course. And you can also head on over to our website, and we'll leave a link in the description there, and you can also find his book there as well. So yeah. Well, let me ask you something, James. As a writer, if you were going to give advice to somebody who wants to write, what would you tell them? Based on your writing experience, what would you tell them?
Nothing's harder than that first step.
Mm.
Once you take the first step, you have a cadre of friends that will give you advice and feedback. But until you take that first step and hit a keyboard or pen to paper, that's the most important part, because the more you do it, the easier it gets. The more you do it, the better it gets.
Oh,
And
for
if you really
sure.
have the chops for it, and I've been told I do, it gets to be fun. I
It
mean, of course,
is.
you get to that point where you bang head here. I can't, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
But like I said, that came later on in the series when I started to actually plan what I was going to write rather than just, okay, free form, let's go.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it's amazing at some of the work you need to put in beforehand before you start writing. But writing that first story is the most important part.
Yeah, yeah. I think there are so many people who are sitting on a good book because they're afraid. They're afraid of that process and
Rejection's tough.
rejection. What if people don't like it? What do I do? And the biggest question I had was, well, what do I do after I'm done with it? Like, how do I get this thing published? You know? And so
One of the things
we
that
try to answer a lot of those questions on this channel.
there's a web page called PubShare. And what you can do is you can go onto PubShare, you can, give them all your information and stuff. And then you, I use a program that takes my Word documents, turns it into a form for an ebook.
Mm,
I can drop it straight into PubShare. I have a wonderful artist. Her name's Cedar Sanderson. And she is, after the first two covers, I paid $15 for an AI artwork. Then I realized, I looked at it and go, I don't think that's good.
yeah,
I talked with Cedar. She gave me a break because I'm writing so many. She doesn't charge me as much as if I were just doing one every 6 months. And I'm able to get great artwork, and that kind of draws the reader in, like, oh, that looks cool. Let's see what it is.
yeah, yeah. But I
And
think
then,
there's a lot of fear for people over just getting started. And like you said, there's nothing harder than that first one. If you just do that first one, after that, yeah, I mean, there's you still have work to do. It's not it doesn't just write itself, right? There's still things you have to do, but now you know, and you can learn from mistakes, and it gets easier and easier. And I love that you said it's fun, because it truly is. Writing can be such a blast, and to get to share that with the rest of the world, that's the
well,
fun part.
and you get to a point, you get to an age in life when you're going to be more of a storyteller than a doer anyway.
Yes,
Like our
yes.
history, how it came to us, in Aesop's fables, or the Iliad, or any kind of Greek tragedy, on up to burning the Library of Alexandria. I know we
Mhm.
lost tons and tons and tons of information about our past lives, but putting it on paper and recording it for prosperity for all time,
Yeah.
especially in this digital world.
Mm. And there's
Because
no excuse. There's no excuse anymore in the world that we live in to not write. I mean,
yeah,
unless you don't want to, and you just don't have a passion for it or a desire.
yeah, no one's
But if
holding.
you're thinking about it, there's nothing holding you back.
Yeah, absolutely. And no one's forcing it right. I mean, if you want to be a consumer of fiction, knock yourself out.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. We need those consumers, don't we?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But I don't see any reason why somebody can't be both
No.
consume and write, because we do get some good ideas just from reading other people's writing.
Oh, and copying someone's style is not a bad thing.
No.
Plagiarism is the most sincere form of flattery.
It's also illegal.
Well, don't plagiarize the whole book. I'm just saying, copying a style, not
Mm,
word for word from
yeah.
Mitchner to your page and
Yeah.
try to sell it off as yours. But seeing different styles of writing, you find your own.
Yeah.
And by finding your own voice, it gives you a platform to speak to others. And that's
Mm,
where the book comes in.
yeah. Awesome. Well, James, we are running out of time here, but I do want to ask you if you could leave our audience with one parting words about your books, what would that be?
It's fast, it has action, and I explore I explore drone warfare to the utmost, and also artificial intelligence, how that could be used on a future battlefield. And there's times I scare myself, but it's entertaining to read. And let's just hope it stays fiction.
Oh, yeah, I hope so too. James, it's been fun. I've really enjoyed getting to know something about you, and your insights into the workings of our military they're pretty cool. I like that. That's really neat. Not everybody gets the experience of being exposed to somebody like you. And now we get to be exposed to a real live person in our military through your writings. So listen, everybody, you have been listening to James Totten. And he has talked to you today about his series, and he's brought some of his military experience into his writings. I know that you are going to be thrilled to check out his books. So make sure that you go down to the description and find the links to his books and go get them. Listen, James, it's been a blast having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Oh, it's been so much fun. I like it. I love having conversations with wonderful authors like yourself. So it's been
Thank you.
great. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you again.
Well, again, you've been watching a book and you've been listening to James Totten, and he's talked to you about some wonderful things. Make sure you go check out his book. As always, thank you. Thank you for spending your time with us, and God bless.